Hello, welcome to the channel. Subscribe, leave a like, and don't forget to write a comment. Enjoy watching.
You don't expect betrayal to show up in socks, reeking of Miller Lite and Axe body spray, carrying a smirk like it's a personality trait. But that's exactly what strolled into my kitchen that Thursday morning, barefoot and unapologetic, while I stood there in my robe holding an empty mug and the sinking realization that my car wasn't parked where I left it. That was the moment I realized my little brother, Dean, had done something even he would have trouble talking his way out of. I had let him crash with me again, because I'm a sucker for the same story told with different excuses. Just until I get back on my feet, he'd said 3 weeks earlier, standing in my doorway with 2 trash bags of clothes and the same haunted look he wore after his second divorce. Dean's the kind of guy who tells you his failures are never his fault, just a cosmic joke the universe keeps playing on him. And I, for reasons even I don't fully understand, kept being the one who laughed politely every time he delivered the punchline. It wasn't like I had no boundaries. I set them every time. No drinking in the house, no late-night guests, no touching my stuff. Especially my car. That Highlander was the one dependable thing in my life, the one big purchase I made on my own without anyone co-signing or helping. It got me to showings, to open houses, to closings. It was my office, my lunchroom, my therapist's couch during long drives when the radio played nothing but silence. And he took it without asking. I didn't even know it had happened until I went outside to leave for work, keys in hand, coffee still brewing inside. The driveway was empty, the oil spot where the Highlander usually sat looking like some black smudge of irony. My first thought wasn't anger. It was confusion. Maybe it had been towed? Maybe I'd left it somewhere? Then Dean came stumbling out of the side yard, shirtless, rubbing his eyes like a teenager on summer break, and said it before I even asked. "Oh, right. I borrowed your car last night," he said, like borrowing meant hot wiring it while I was asleep and taking it on a midnight joyride through downtown Cleveland. "You borrowed it?" He shrugged. "Yeah, I needed to grab something from this girl's place. You were knocked out, so I figured it was cool." My heart started beating in my ears. "Is it parked somewhere?" Another shrug, this one more sheepish. "I hit a curb. It's at Mike's garage. Don't worry, I told them to call you." I stared at him. "You wrecked the car?" He laughed. "It's not wrecked. Just kinda tweaked the under part. Whatever that's called. Suspension or some shit. You're always so uptight about this stuff. Relax, sis. You're too soft to stay mad." That was it. That sentence. Those 9 stupid words. You're too soft to stay mad. Like all the times I'd swallowed my frustration, all the chances I gave him, all the bailing out, I guessed to him it looked like softness. Weakness, even. He thought I'd just let this one slide too. Like every other time. I looked at him for a long second. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I knew exactly what I wanted to say and chose not to. I didn't scream, didn't yell, didn't cuss or cry or throw my mug against the siding like a woman in a Lifetime movie. I just said, "You're right." His face lit up. "See? I knew you'd understand." I nodded, walked back inside, poured my coffee like nothing happened, and sat at the table without looking back at him. That was the moment something inside me shifted, like a steel door slamming shut behind my ribs. Because here's the thing. Dean thought softness was a flaw. He thought quiet meant weak and patience meant gullible. What he didn't understand, what he still doesn't, to this day, is that silence can be the scariest sound in the world, especially when it comes from someone who's always been your last lifeline. Later that day, the mechanic confirmed it. Cracked oil pan, bent control arms, something about the axle that made me stop listening. In plain terms, the Highlander was toast. The repair bill would be more than the damn car was worth. Dean offered to work something out, but I told him not to worry about it. "Seriously," I said, as I handed him a beer from the fridge that night. "Let's not make it a thing." He grinned like a toddler who dodged a spanking. And I watched him drink, wondering if he realized the second he called me soft was the second I stopped being safe for him. He didn't. Not then. Not yet. But he would. Oh, he definitely would. There's something beautifully sinister about silence when you know you're holding the knife and the other person hasn't even realized they're bleeding yet. I didn't have to raise my voice, slam doors, or play the dramatic sister throwing ultimatums around like confetti at a failed wedding reception. All I had to do was remember one very specific detail that Dean, in his beer-fogged brilliance, had completely forgotten. Our father, who died 3 years ago with more debts than teeth in his mouth, left behind one thing of value, a trust fund, carefully designed for one irresponsible child and managed, entirely and without compromise, by his more dependable sibling. That sibling was me. When Mom passed, Dad got weirdly sentimental and suspiciously organized. For a man who once used a pizza box as a filing system, he suddenly had binders, folders, notarized documents, and an actual will. He said it straight, "Rachel, you're the one who keeps us upright. Dean's the one who keeps us spinning. You get the house, and you get the reins." I didn't even argue. I knew what he meant. Keep the chaos in check. Be the adult. Save him from himself, again and again and again, until you're too old or too bitter to care anymore. The trust was supposed to be a lifeline, not a lifestyle. $500 a week, deposited every Friday into Dean's checking account. The bank account was in his name, but with a caveat, one that even I had almost forgotten about. As cosigner and primary controller of the fund, I could restrict, adjust, or freeze any transaction at any time. It was meant to protect him from overspending, drug use, gambling, bad investments, or whatever else my father assumed Dean might spiral into. He never imagined Dean would use it to buy vape cartridges, bottom-shelf whiskey, and spend $40 a week on gas station sushi. Still, I never touched it. Not once. I figured I'd let him have this one thing, this small dignity, even if it burned a slow hole in my gut every time I saw his bank statements. But after the Highlander stunt, after the smirk, after the "you're too soft" line, I stopped thinking of it as mercy and started thinking of it as leverage. I didn't go nuclear right away. That's not my style. I like my revenge like I like my coffee, slow-dripped, bitter, and served when it's just cool enough to burn on the way down. So I waited until Thursday evening. I logged into the trust account dashboard, confirmed his Friday deposit was scheduled, and with a few clicks, I restricted it. Not canceled. Not removed. Just paused. Then I disabled his debit card, placed a hold on his checking account, and marked 2 recent ATM withdrawals as pending investigation, which locked his remaining funds in limbo. The next morning was a symphony of chaos. I knew exactly when he'd realize it, probably 10:45, after his usual lazy start, when he wandered into the gas station on Lorraine Avenue to grab a tallboy and a pack of whatever off-brand cigarettes he was into this week. I heard the front door slam from the kitchen and smiled into my coffee as he stomped into the house, shouting like someone had stolen his kidneys. "Yo, Rachel, my card's not working. Some fraud crap or something." I didn't even flinch. Huh, weird. Did you call the bank? Yeah, they said something about a cosigner restriction. Like someone locked me out. I told them it had to be a mistake. I nodded slowly, stirring my mug. And then, strange, he squinted at me like a toddler trying to solve algebra. "Wait, are you the cosigner?" I met his gaze and gave the faintest shrug. "I think so. Dad set it up that way." "You froze my account?" "What the hell, Ratch?" He was fuming. Face red, arms flailing like he was about to put on a one-man Broadway show called "How Dare You Hold Me Accountable." I sipped my coffee and kept my voice as calm as a cat in sunlight. Didn't freeze it. Just paused it. Temporarily. "While I look into some recent issues." He exploded. "You can't just do that. That money's mine." Now here's the kicker. And it's the part that'll probably have half of you watching this ready to punch your screen, but I'm going to say it anyway. he asked me what kind of person freezes a $500,000 account over one car. I said, one car? Dean, the Highlander was worth maybe 10 grand. 500,000 isn't even 10 times that. And yes, I know that math doesn't add up. That's 100,000, not 5. But the way his jaw dropped like I'd hit him with a dictionary? Worth it. He kept yelling, pacing the kitchen like a caged raccoon, ranting about rights and betrayal and how you're not better than me just because you pay your bills on time. And I just sat there, nodded occasionally, and mentally noted that the man didn't even offer to pay for the damage he caused. Not once. Not even a token gesture. He thought the apology was implied in his hangover. What he didn't understand, what he still didn't grasp, even as he cursed my name while storming out to his room, was that I wasn't just punishing him. I was testing him, giving him one clear signal. You crossed a line you can't uncross. I was seeing what he'd do with consequences. Would he apologize? Would he humble himself? Would he act like someone worth trusting again? Spoiler. He didn't. He thought I'd break. Thought I'd get soft again. That by Sunday morning, he'd have his weekly deposit, his card would work, and I'd be back to playing the role of his tired but enabling older sister. He was wrong. And now that I'd tasted how easy it was to take something from him without raising my voice or lifting a finger, I realized something that scared even me. I liked it. A little too much. If there's one thing I've learned from watching people unravel, it's that desperation doesn't always look like someone crying in the corner. It often wears the mask of charm, sweetness, even forced humility. Especially when the person using it has spent their whole life learning exactly what strings to pull and which buttons to press to get what they want. Dean didn't spiral immediately after I froze the account. No, at first he thought he could finesse his way back into my good graces like he'd done 100 times before with girlfriends, bosses, landlords, even Mom when she caught him sneaking cigarettes behind the shed at 15. He figured I was just blowing off steam and that, like always, I'd come around eventually, unfreeze his account, and make him pancakes like nothing ever happened. The first tactic he used was charm, or at least his version of it, which is basically him putting on a clean shirt, brushing his teeth, and saying words like please and appreciate with a kind of forced sincerity that even a golden retriever would see through. One morning, he made me coffee, my coffee from my beans, using my French press, and set it on the kitchen table like he'd just donated a kidney. Thought you might want a head start this morning, he said, sliding the mug across like it was some peace offering from a man who had no business trying diplomacy. I thanked him without smiling, took a sip, and asked, "You use filtered water or tap?" He blinked like I'd spoken a foreign language. Sink, I think." I poured it straight into the sink. The next day, he moved to guilt. That's when I knew the charm had flopped. He came into the living room holding a framed photo of us from a Thanksgiving 10 years ago, one of the last ones where we were all still pretending to be a normal family. "You remember this day?" he asked, his voice heavy with practiced sorrow. That was when I still had a place in this family. I didn't even look up from my laptop. "Yeah, I remember. You broke Dad's recliner trying to wrestle Uncle Jim." He set the frame down and walked out without saying another word. By the end of the week, he had escalated to full-blown emotional blackmail. "I can't even buy gas," he said loudly from the hallway. "You know that, right? I'm gonna be homeless. Is that what you want?" I told him I didn't remember asking him to live here in the first place. That earned me a slammed door and a long, drawn-out sigh like he was auditioning for some off-Broadway tragedy called My Sister Doesn't Love Me. I could have told him that dramatic sighing only works when someone feels sorry for you. And I was way past feeling sorry. So I started pushing back in my own quiet, satisfying ways. I changed the Wi-Fi password from Lakehouse 2021 to Get a Job Dean and waited 2 days for him to ask. He never did. Just walked around grumbling about the internet being down while trying to load Instagram on his cracked iPhone. I reset the garage code too, locking him out of the mini fridge where he kept his off-brand beers and expired energy drinks. When he finally asked what the new code was, I told him it was the date he promised to move out. He stared at me for a good 10 seconds before saying, but I never said a date, and I just smiled and said, exactly. Still, even after all that, I thought maybe, just maybe, he was learning. Maybe the discomfort was chipping away at that arrogant shell. Then, late one night, I passed through the living room to grab my charger and saw his phone light up on the coffee table. I'm not a snoop by nature, but when I saw the notification preview that said, transfer hit, got the Zelle, my stomach flipped. Zelle? I picked up the phone, still unlocked from whatever he'd been doing, and opened the message. It was from our Uncle Rob. The full text read, transfer hit. Got the Zelle. Sent what I could. Keep it quiet. Something in me hardened, like concrete setting. He wasn't broke. He wasn't stranded. He wasn't learning anything. He had a side stream of cash coming in the whole time, and just never thought I'd notice. That's the thing about Dean, he never plays one con at a time. He's always got a backup, a safety net, a hidden stash. And he thought I was still the sister who wouldn't look too closely. So I made a call the next morning. I called Uncle Rob and put on the act I'd perfected over decades. Hey, Uncle Rob. So random, Dean mentioned you owed him some money from back in the day? Some poker debt or something? There was a pause. A long, telling pause. He said what? Rob finally replied. He said you owed him a few hundred, that's all. Something from a few months ago. Rob cleared his throat. Rachel, I've been helping him out here and there. Sure. He said he was trying to stay afloat. Didn't know he was feeding you that kind of story. I let it hang there for a second, then chuckled softly. Well, you know Dean. Always a few versions of the truth. The next day, Dean tried to check his phone for a follow-up transfer. Nothing came. He refreshed it 5 times, pacing like a junkie waiting on a fix. By the 3rd refresh, he started muttering to himself. By the 5th, he threw the phone on the couch and sat there staring into space. He never asked me about it. Never accused me of calling Rob. Maybe he suspected. Maybe he didn't. But something in his posture changed that day, shoulders slumped, mouth tight, eyes darting around like someone who'd just realized the walls were closing in and the exits were sealed. I didn't say a word. Just walked past him with my keys, stepped over the sock he hadn't bothered to pick up, and left for work. He thought I'd crack. Thought I'd snap, or apologize, or undo everything I'd done out of guilt. But I was just getting started. There's a particular kind of silence that creeps in between two people who've shared too much history to hate each other outright, but too much damage to ever find their way back to normal again. That was what our house felt like by the start of week 4, quiet, not like peace, but like the eerie stillness right before something breaks. Dean had stopped with the tantrums. No more begging for money, no more guilt-tripping monologues, no more half-hearted stabs at charm. He didn't even try to argue about the garage code anymore. He just existed in the space like a ghost that hadn't figured out it was dead yet. And for reasons I couldn't quite explain at first, that bothered me more than all the yelling ever had. He started doing things I didn't expect, dishes without being asked, wiping down counters after microwaving his sad little dinners, even folding the laundry that had sat in the dryer for days. Not with any joy or sense of responsibility, mind you. More like someone going through motions because it gave his hands something to do besides punch a wall. He ate quietly, showered at odd hours, and sometimes sat in the garage alone, staring into space like a man trying to remember what hope used to feel like. I told myself I didn't care, that it was what he deserved, that he'd finally been forced to sit in the mess he made. And yet, there were moments, tiny, flickering things, when I caught myself wondering if I'd gone too far. It started with a memory. I was making dinner one night, chopping onions with the kind of mechanical precision that comes from being too distracted to care about your fingers, when I remembered 6th grade. I had just moved up to middle school, braces still fresh, backpack twice my size, and a group of older boys had decided I was their new hobby. They'd trip me in the hall, knock my books down, call me names that made my ears burn. One day, Dean, who was only in 8th grade at the time, saw it happen. He didn't say a word. Just walked over, grabbed one of the boys by the shirt, and shoved him into a locker so hard it left a dent. Got suspended for 2 days. Didn't even tell mom why. Then another one, years later, high school, junior year. I was caught sneaking out to meet a guy with a motorcycle and more tattoos than job prospects. I panicked when I saw mom's car pulling into the driveway early and ran around the side of the house like an idiot. Dean was the one who answered the door, told her he'd invited his friends over, said I wasn't even home. Covered for me. Took the heat when I definitely didn't deserve it. I remember thinking back then that no matter how much of a screw-up he was, Dean had my back. So, what the hell was I doing now? I started to feel it in my chest, this low, buzzing ache that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't punishing him anymore. Maybe I was just hurting him because it was easier than forgiving him. The power felt good. Too good. And that scared the hell out of me. I'd always thought of myself as the one who cleaned up the wreckage, not the one who caused it. Then the phone call came. It was a voicemail, actually. I missed the call while I was in the shower, and when I checked my phone later, I saw the number unknown, but vaguely familiar. I played the message while brushing my hair, not expecting much, just another spam call, maybe a real estate client, something boring. But the voice stopped me cold. Hey, Rachel. This is Mike Flanagan, your dad's old buddy from the sheet metal union. I know it's been a while, but I just wanted to let you know I talked to Dean a couple weeks back. He said he was thinking about moving to Dayton, asked me about openings we had in the shop. Seemed like he was serious this time, said he was even gonna try and pay you back for the car. Just thought you should know. Take care. I stood there, towel around my shoulders, hair dripping onto the tile, just staring at the screen like it had punched me in the gut. 2 weeks ago. That was before I'd frozen the account, before I'd cut off his funds, before I'd called Uncle Rob and snuffed out his last escape route. He had a plan. A real one. Maybe for the first time in years. And I'd crushed it before it had a chance to stand. I wanted to scream. Or cry. Or storm into the garage and throw my arms around him, tell him I was sorry that I hadn't known. But I didn't do any of that. I just sat on the edge of the tub, heart pounding, eyes fixed on nothing, wondering how many moments I'd missed because I was too busy proving a point. Maybe he didn't tell me because he was afraid I'd laugh at him. Or maybe he knew I wouldn't believe him anyway. Maybe that's why he gave up trying to explain and just retreated into that strange, quiet limbo where we'd both been living for the past week. Or maybe, worst of all, he never intended to tell me at all, because even he didn't trust me anymore. The mirror cracked, right then and there. I didn't shatter, not completely, but something inside me splintered, just enough to let the doubt seep in. What if I was wrong? What if, just this once, he wasn't lying? But I couldn't undo what I'd already done. I couldn't rewind the choices, couldn't take back the silent cuts, couldn't erase the humiliation I'd made him swallow like cheap bourbon. I had committed, gone too far, and now I was staring into the reflection of someone I didn't quite recognize. She looked strong, cold, controlled, but not kind, and definitely not soft. There's something about endings that never really feel like endings when they come quietly, without any doors slamming, voices raised, or apologies choked out through tears. They just happen. Like a light switch flipped in a room you weren't ready to leave, or a breath you didn't realize would be your last before diving under. That's how I let it end with Dean. No confrontation. No explanation. Just a quiet decision made alone, in the low blue glow of my laptop screen, sometime after midnight, with only the hum of the refrigerator and the creak of the old kitchen chair to witness it. I logged into the trust management account like I had done a dozen times in the past few weeks, each time holding the power to lift or tighten the leash I'd wrapped around my brother's neck. The cursor hovered over the Restrictions tab, and I stared at it longer than I probably should have, questioning everything I'd done and not done since the day he wrecked my car. The car that, now that I thought about it, had never really meant that much until he took it. It wasn't about the Highlander. Not anymore. It had become a stand-in for everything else I never said out loud. Every slight, every broken promise, every time I picked him up and told myself it would be the last. I clicked the button. Just like that. No fireworks. No system warning. The freeze was lifted and the weekly payments resumed their course like a river whose dam had quietly collapsed overnight. His debit card would start working again. The funds would be available by morning. And he would never know why. Or when. Or what changed. He would probably assume the bank resolved some bureaucratic error. Maybe he'd think the fraud hold was reversed, or that I had a change of heart, but was too proud to admit it. Let him believe that. Let him think he won. That somehow the universe had corrected itself and restored his financial lifeline because fate owed him something. That's the version he could live with. The truth was too quiet, too surgical. The truth was that I gave him a final shot without telling him it was his last. 2 days later, I was gone. I had already packed most of my things in the evenings while he sulked in the garage, thinking I was just working late or ignoring him on purpose. I found a one-bedroom apartment on the east side, smaller, older, with creaky floors and cabinets that squeaked, but it was mine, and more importantly, he wouldn't know where it was. I changed my number before the movers came, forwarded my mail, took down the emergency contact info at the bank, and replaced it with my friend Carla's name, just in case. I left him the house, though. Not because I thought he deserved it, but because I didn't want to fight for something that had become too full of ghosts to ever feel like home again. Let him pay the water bill for once. Let him sit with the silence. Let him open the fridge and realize that the food didn't just restock itself every Sunday. I didn't leave a note. I didn't give him a warning. I just left. The day I moved out, I drove past the old elementary school where we used to walk to in the fall, when leaves crunched underfoot and Dean would always walk 3 steps ahead, pretending not to be watching over me, but never letting me fall behind. I sat at a red light near the park where we used to ride bikes, and for a second I almost turned around. Almost. But I didn't. He never called. Maybe because he couldn't. Maybe because he didn't care. Or maybe, just maybe, because he knew he wouldn't like what I had to say. The last time I saw him was the morning before I left. He was in the living room, scrolling through his phone, eyebrows raised in mild confusion. "Huh," he said. "My account's back. Weird. I guess the bank finally fixed it." I was standing in the doorway, holding a box labeled bathroom stuff, and I looked at him for a long moment. Not with anger, not with sadness, not even with pity. Just a flat, blank neutrality that I had trained myself to wear like armor. I could have told him the truth. Could have said, "No, Dean, the bank didn't fix it, I did." I could have said, "I gave you one last chance, and you don't even realize it's already slipping through your hands." But I didn't say anything. I just nodded once, slowly, and walked out the door. Later, in that new apartment with peeling paint and the sound of a neighbor's TV bleeding through the wall, I sat on the couch and replayed the whole thing in my head like a movie I wasn't sure I'd understood the ending of. I thought about the trust, about the voicemail, about the version of Dean who once protected me from bullies and took the fall for my mistakes, and I wondered how that version of him had turned into the man who laughed while I stood in the ruins of my car, calling me soft. I kept wondering if I had done the right thing, or if right even mattered anymore. He never said sorry. I never said goodbye. That's how we left it, quiet, still, like a bomb waiting under the floorboards, humming low, never quite exploding, but always there. And that's the part he still doesn't know. The fuse wasn't lit out of anger. It was lit the moment I realized I didn't need him to know I'd won. I just needed him to feel it slowly, subtly, over time, as everything he depended on began to erode beneath his feet, and he couldn't tell if it was gravity, guilt, or just me. And maybe that makes me just as broken. Or maybe it finally makes me free.